Hey guys, welcome to another episode of El Jefe Shop Shop. This week, Jackson's back. We're working on the Yaris and we're putting on more spotlights. Alright, so first thing, we're going to take off the existing spotlights because this mount shakes like crazy when you are driving. So that is really annoying, isn't it, Jackson?
It certainly is.
So Jackson's just cutting off the zip ties that holds the bumper on because it's been off a few times. And then we've got another pair of the same spotlights to go on the front as well. And then we're going to make this thing look like an 80s rally car. Cue the air antenna placement. Boys, you know what I'm talking about. Alright, so we got the Yaris torn down a bit. We got a piece of bar that we're going to put basically here. So we're going to put the piece of bar just here and have spotties come off of that. So we're going to rip the bar off and then make a bracket behind and then make something for this to mount to. Alright, so I've made a bar, drilled a bunch of holes in it, mounted number plate, got the headlights, the spotlights, sorry, mounted in the rally formation that Jackson wants. He's just doing some repairs to the bumper with some drift stitch, cleaned off the roofing tar tape off of the side, so we'll fix that as well. And then once he's done that, chuck the bumper back on, try and put the mount that I made that goes onto the rad support, or the Rio, come out, and then it will come pretty much flush with the front of the number plate on the bumper bar, and then this guy will mount to that thing and hopefully be quickly removable. And then once it's all fixed, then we can paint it and then do the wiring. Alright, so we're just going to cut this little section of plastic bumper out, and then the plate that I made. This plate that I made will go onto the Rio, and then cut this down a bit and it will poke out of the front of the bumper there. And then we put that big bar with the spotties on it on the front of that, and then we can attach the bumper to this if it is still flibbly. Flibbly is the technical term. Alright, so we just mocked up the 4 spotlights on the front of this Yaris. It's very obnoxious, but that's pretty much what Jackson wanted. So we're going to cut the metal bar a little bit shorter, add a little tiny spacer in between where the metal bar attaches to that thing we welded to the Rio, and then paint it and wiring. And the number plate does go in the middle. I just haven't put that on. But proof of concept, looks ridiculous, and it will work really well. Alright, so we've kind of been just getting on with it. We do not need a spacer there. Everything lined up in the end. Just painted this bar, chamfered the ends. Jackson's just swapping his wheels over. putting the rotation in them. And then we got all the bits here to put it all back together. So I just need to work on some wiring and then we can put it all together for good and bolt the bumper on properly. Alright, so we just got the wiring done. Just going to make sure that the lights work before we put everything back together. So I got the welding helmet for safety. Flick it on. It works. That's really bright, even with the helmet. It's enough to turn it on. Success! Alright, so I've got the spotlights all mounted up, the number plate on. It's all pretty good. The main bar was still a bit wet, so there's a few thumbprints in that. But these things are super bright. Hopefully that does justice on camera. Not really. They are mental. And they don't wobble at all. Give them a wobble, Jackson. That's much less wobbly than before.
Are they good? Yeah, they are.
A little bit, yeah.
It doesn't look like these bottom ones are on.
Doesn't look like they're on at all from here. They definitely are. They don't look on camera really, but
They're the same.
wicked. Alright, so we're all tidied up. The ARS is back together. We did run the spotties for about 10 minutes and the wiring got really warm and the fuse actually melted. It didn't pop, it melted. So the wiring's actually getting hot in a way that we don't want to run it. So we're going to run a separate lot of wiring later. But for now we've just disconnected the two ones we just added and put the two top ones back to how they were. Alright, so we're just going to remake some wiring looms for Jackson spotlights. So I've just drawn out the relay pin out here and I'll give you a quick explanation. So you need a 12 volt from your battery and a earth to your chassis or to your battery. So these two are interchangeable, doesn't really matter which way they go through. And then you need a trigger wire. So when you turn your headlights on or your high beams on, this will come on. And then you have a wire out to the load or to the light. So that's all it is. So these two have constant power, and then when you hit the trigger it shuts the switch and you get power from here straight from the battery to the light. Okay, so I've got the two power harnesses all wired up. So we've got the terminal for the battery, fuse block, and then they come to the relay. So that's your main power and earth for the relay system. So we're just going to get the trigger and then the load light from the spotlights. So they're still attached to Jackson's car and the switch is under the dash. So we're going to have to do this under the bonnet. So we've got the new spotlight loom. So I've run two separate power feeds and two separate earths to two of the spotlights, so they shouldn't melt this time. I've just chucked a wire snake through, try and make our life a little bit easier. So I'll just take this to the end of the wire snake, pull it through and then plug everything in. Alright, so I've just quickly chucked the wiring in and we've tested it, and I've labelled the top and bottom relay, so T for top, which is all smudged, B for bottom, and same with the fuses. You can read the T and you can't read the B, but it's close enough. And now if Jackson were to turn the lights on, we have spotlights. They are very bright. My eyes hurt. Alright, so we're just going to tidy up the wiring. We're going to try and put it on the top terminals of the battery instead of the side ones. And then we can try and stash all of the wiring behind the battery There's plenty of room back there. Cut to the time lapse. Alright, it's been like 15 minutes now. Lights are on, everything's still really cool. So I think we fixed the problem of the wiring turning to licorice. So it's all done and all good to go. So thank you very much for watching this week's episode of El Herve Shop Shop, and we'll see you next week.